From the Corner Office is brought to you by Synovus Bank, championing business growth through trusted, relationship-driven banking throughout the Gulf Coast region. Darla Bonk's life story and career proves the axiom that you don't have to be the CEO necessarily to be a strong leader. She took on leadership roles at multiple organizations long before she started her own manufacturing business and leadership consulting companies. She's even added another role to her resume, Fort Myers City Councilwoman. The Business Observer writes about leaders like Darla every week in print and online. To read those stories and more, subscribe to the Business Observer. Go to businessobserverfl.com. Hello and welcome to the Business Observer's From the Corner Office podcast. I'm Mark Gordon, managing editor of the Business Observer. Today's guest is Darla Bonk, founder and CEO of Darla Bonk Consulting. Darla, welcome and thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
All right, it's going to be a great conversation. You have done some really interesting things in your career, including right now your consulting gig. I want to hear about that. And Fort Myers, you're a civic leader and city councilwoman in Fort Myers. I want to talk about that as well. But we're going to start with some rapid fire questions, get our audience to know Darla a little bit better. So we'll start with a time machine. Okay, are you ready?
I'm ready.
You have a chance to go in a time machine. Do you go back in time or do you go into the future, and why?
I'm going to say that I'm going to not do either one because I do my best to live in the present, to be present, and to allow the present to be all that I need in that moment.
All right, that's the first time we've ever heard that answer. I don't think I've asked it that many times, but all right, so you're going to be in the present. You're an original. Excellent. All right, we're going to switch gears, talk us like a little out of work stuff. What is the best meal that you cook or prepare?
So the best meal I cook and prepare is reservations. My husband is the chef.
Yes.
And we all do better when Darla is not the one cooking. I can cook some things, and it's usually going to be a pasta of some kind because that's easy and it's hard to mess that up. But my husband is the chef. I'm the sous chef. I like to chop up the vegetables and see how well my knife skills are, but that's about as far as it goes.
Well, all right. So you know what you need to do to succeed, though. That's part of good leadership, right?
Here you go. You can find somebody smarter than you and get out of their way.
Yes. Hire smart people. And just real quick on pasta, because it came up today. I know you have kids as well, and you would talk about the similarities between leadership and parenting and how they kind of overlap. And our son is 17, is going to be going to college soon. And I heard from another parent that has a child in college. Now, not her child, but somebody, her son's roommate in college went to cook pasta. And he put the box of pasta in the pot, but he didn't put any water in it. And he put it on the stove and turned the stove on and walked away. And obviously it didn't work. And so I hear that story and I said, I have failed as a parent if my son does that. He does know how to make pasta though. So it's a win.
Well, there you go. That's something. That's something.
Yes. All right, last question. If you had to delete last rapid fire question, if you had to delete all the apps on your phone except 3, you can only keep 3 apps. What are the 3 that you would keep?
I'm going to keep my LinkedIn app. I'm going to keep my Holy Bible app, and I'm keeping my Calm app.
Excellent. I know a little bit about Calm. Like, what do you use Calm for?
So I have struggled with insomnia since high school. So the Calm app, you can put different things on it at night. And I have this wonderfully calm sounding English speaking man who helps me kind of put all of the day's thoughts away. Because as soon as my head hits the pillow, that's when everything starts happening. And it really just gets you to get your body to almost, in the meditative state and calm state, quote unquote, name of the app, so that you can fall asleep faster. And there's things where usually they're 5 or 7 or 10 minutes long, and the longest I've ever gotten through it is 3 minutes. So It works. For those insomniacs out there, it works.
Wow. Excellent. All right. Very cool. I like that. Okay. So we're going to get into your career a little bit. Give us let's start with the current. You like to be in the present. Let's start with the present. Tell us about Darla Bonk Consulting and what that's about.
Yeah, so this stemmed out of our manufacturing business. People were asking us how we were doing things and being successful at it. So I'd go to companies and help them solve their problems. And that turned out to be its own company. So here I am 3 years later and working with companies, all B2B, going in and helping them with their people, their processes, and their systems, and creating and solving problems that work for them so that they can build and love the business that they built and build and love the lives that they're trying to build as a result of that business and what it provides to them and their families.
And you mentioned the manufacturing business. You guys had a manufacturing business for about a decade or so. Tell us about that company.
Yes. So we are going to be celebrating our 10-year anniversary in May. And so not too often you hear about manufacturing business. Well, it used to. Now we're showing some skin in Florida. It's coming back, yes. So we manufacture anything that is made of metal that goes up on a roof, whether it's commercial or residential, whether it's tile or shingle. Every roof has metal on it. So we mass fabricate that, ship that out to distribution companies throughout the country who then sell that to roofing contractors. So if any of you are familiar with Babcock Ranch and see metal out there, more than likely that's our metal out there.
We didn't say, what's the name of your company?
Architectural metal flashings.
Architectural metal flashings. And you guys, 10 years this year. That's fantastic. Yes. And sorry, so you're doing this, you have this business, now you have a consulting business. And then I believe it was 5 years ago, you decided I should run for office. Tell us.
Well, somebody did. Yeah. So never wanted to be in politics. I'm from this area, so I'm familiar with the town and the players, but never had any desire to be in politics. And long story short, dipped my toe in the water and became a city council person in November of 2020. Interesting year, of course, to dip your toe in that water. And then there was a couple of big issues, green space and water quality, that I kind of took under my wing during that first term and didn't feel like those had been completed. And so I decided to run again for one more term and had the fortunate piece of not having anybody run against me. And so here I am completing the first year of the second term.
At the City of Fort Myers City Council.
City of Fort Myers, yes.
All right, let's stick with that. What have you learned, Darla, about leadership? You know, you have to have consensus in politics. I believe you're one of 6 city council members. What have you learned about leadership in being on a city council?
Yeah, great question. There's 6 of us on the city council, and then we have our mayor. We are a weak mayor form of government, which means we have a city manager that runs our day-to-day operations. We are primarily setting the policy. So when you have a policy idea and you have 6 other single member folks up there who have their ideas of how things should be ran from a policy perspective, the biggest piece I've learned about is, although I think there's a better way to do things, you've got to listen. And you have to be able to understand those cues that those other folks are giving to you, where there is an opportunity to build that consensus and for everyone to feel like together we are all winning by coming to the conclusion that we are.
Yeah, I mean, is it challenging to kind of go in and how do you address that challenge of, okay, so you have idea A, but there's A, B, C, there's B, C, D, and E, and you're trying to steer to A, but you have to compromise. How do you handle that?
Yeah, and it's really interesting because in whatever the topic may be, we're all coming at it from a different lens, right? So you may have a wealth of knowledge in this topic. I may have a limited wealth of knowledge, but lots of opinions. So bridging what the facts are of the matter, what the costs are from a city budget perspective, because we're also managing the treasury, and then how then do we determine that this is going to be the best route of action for our city and for our taxpayers can prove challenging. And so you really have to be open to, maybe my way is not the best way, and how can I get behind someone else who has far more knowledge about this topic than I do and lend value and support for them in that moment, because they do have the better opportunity. And that is really what leadership is. I know this is what I want our company to do, but my guys are front and center on this, and they've got a better way to do it because they're the ones doing it every day.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic because you have to shelve the ego, but also balance a little bit. You still have your job to do, which is to represent District 6.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
The egos definitely can get challenged sometimes for sure, but that's human
Yeah.
nature.
And your other sort of line of work, Darla Bonk Consulting, I'm curious, what have you learned from leadership there? You work with some high performing, high level companies. Tell us about what you have learned about leadership working with some of these clients.
Yeah, great question. The biggest thing I've learned is that most business owners, and over 90% of my clientele, business owners are men, is that they're looking at the situation or the problem at 10,000 feet. And they
Yeah.
really have to come up at the 50,000 feet and really kind of get out of their own way. It's hard to kind of see past the end of your nose, as the saying goes. And so it's really getting them to come out of that hold that they need to have of how they've always done it or how they've never done it, and be open enough to say, just because you're looking at this from a different way doesn't mean it can't also work, and doesn't mean you're any less of a leader or any worse of a business owner. You're a great business owner. And let's make sure it stays that way and your business gets to stay in business, and that you can pass this down to your children. And what does that need to look like? And getting them just to see a different perspective on that. So that's been the biggest
Yeah.
learning experience, of getting them to understand where we might be looking at what they think is the symptom, but actually we need to talk about the root issue.
Yeah, so to be a little bit more open-minded. So Darla, take us back. Tell us about growing up and how you got into this kind of diverse career in business.
So I grew up in a Christian home. We moved here in Southwest Florida when I was 9 from Missouri. My dad became a pastor here. And the only constant, I will say, from a career perspective, is that my parents always told us we could be anything we wanted to be, and we could just shoot for the stars. The only limitation we had was us. So we always had that instilled in us. But I was the one who graduated from high school having no idea what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I was the one who graduated college having no idea what I wanted to do. But I just knew that was kind of the next trajectory, right? You graduate high school, you go to college, you get a job. And those opportunities kind of fell into my lap after college. I had the opportunity to work for a insurance company at their headquarters. And that's where I learned a lot about the corporate experience,
Right.
the systems, the process, all of those kinds of key elements in operating a major corporation that I later would understand would be the foundation upon which I was able to build successes from other places. Because I've had a career in all different types of industries, from nonprofit to selling SaaS to working with fintech to even a stint at good old paper, the news press, to now the role now,
Yeah, I saw you had a little stint at the Fort Myers News Press. Tell us about that.
I did. So I was coming off my experience at the American Cancer Society, and I'd done that for 5 years, right in the height of the recession, still having to raise millions and millions of dollars, where we were heaviest hit, and it just did a number on me. And I wanted a break. I didn't want to have any responsibility, so I went and worked for the publisher as her executive assistant and chief of staff, and I absolutely loved it. It was the greatest, hardest job I've ever had, and I realized I wasn't the best when it came to details by being in that job, but that was kind of a prerequisite needed in that job. But had a wonderful opportunity for that year to just kind of, refuel and get creative in a different role and be in a supportive role again, and understand what that means and be on that side as a true employee again. And I had grateful experiences and wonderful relationships I still have today.
Yeah. So moving on to more leadership focused questions, Darla, what do you look for in leaders? What's one characteristic every leader needs to have?
The ability to pivot, the ability to say I'm wrong, the ability to say I need to think about this differently. Many leaders are dug in when it comes to how they think, how they operate, how they do things or process things. And when you can sit there and say, I don't know, or maybe we need to do this differently, I think is a crucial need that leaders should be able to implement in their business.
Is there yeah, for sure. And I'm wondering, is there an example where you did that that stands out in your mind, that you were able to pivot, shift, change your mindset?
Yeah, I would say when we first opened up the business, the manufacturing business, we had right time, right place. We had a client that impacted a considerable amount of our business, and I held on to them with everything I had in me, and ended up doing the thing that you don't do. They became about 30% of our business revenue.
Yeah.
And, learning to diversify and learning to really pivot from that, and understanding by doing that, we were able to grow and scale even better, and we kept that client. And so it's just the perspective needed to shift in that, because, you've got that guaranteed revenue, is coming in, but what if they walk? And so that was a lesson learned early, and I'm grateful for it.
Yeah. What's a piece of leadership advice you've received during your career that stands out to you today?
Communication is everything. I think it's the greatest differentiator, because, you can hold all of the knowledge and the insight and intellect in the world, but if you cannot express that in a way that will move people, shift their thinking to drive that into action, it holds no power. So communication, I think, is everything.
Yeah, so true. And I was going to ask you, talk about storytelling in leadership. How important is storytelling and communicating? You guys are in a niche manufacturing company, right? So that's probably pretty important. But how important is storytelling in leadership, and how have you used it?
I think storytelling is everything from a business perspective and in leadership, because stories are what makes us relatable to one another, right? And stories are what brings us all together. And, it's one thing for me to say, I am creating a product that you need for your team to go and install up on a roof. It's a far different thing for me to say, I'm an extension of your business, and we're going to make sure that you and your team have everything you need when your crew gets to the job site. We're going to take care of this for you. We're going to be that extension of your business, and be a business partner for you. That's a much better story to tell than, hey, I've got a product, do you want to buy it or not?
Yeah. Yeah. And you talked about, the client, sort of diversification of clients and diversification of revenue streams. How do you balance the short term, especially in manufacturing, where you got to have the output, right? So how do you balance short term wins with long term vision for where you want to go with the business?
I think one of the things business leaders fail to do is celebrate the short-term wins often enough. I think we look at the long-term vision, we look at the goals that we have, and as soon as we've reached or achieved that goal, we're not even satisfied. We want the next best thing. And giving yourself the right to stop and celebrate that short-term win. Hey, we were able to turn around that PO or that quote very quickly. Great job, everyone. What did that feel like? What is that looking like? Now you understand where we're going in our 5-10-year strategic plan. And every day those wins matter. Every day chipping away at that allows us to know we are capable of doing that, provides the motivation to do that, and provides the momentum to keep doing that.
Yeah, the short-term wins, that's huge, right? I talk about in the newspaper business, the Business Observer puts out a daily edition every day, Monday through Friday, and a weekly print edition. And sometimes you got to stop and celebrate. This was a really good issue, but at the same time, you're already on to the next one while that one is coming out. So it's that balance.
Yeah, absolutely.
Moving back to a little bit more personal, has imposter syndrome come up during your career, and how do you handle imposter syndrome?
It did when I was younger, because I had parents who just instilled we could be anything we wanted to be. I didn't go through that as much as we hear, in recent days. But when I did, what I had to do was just recall those people and those mentors who poured into me and believed in me when I didn't, so that when it came time for me to buck up and really show what I was capable of, it was an opportunity for me to prove something to myself, not prove to everybody else. And once I was able to stop living my life for other people's opinions of me, the imposter syndrome tends to be less and less of an issue.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit more about your parents. I'm fascinated. So, because they seem to have had a pretty big influence on your life. What was what was it like growing up, and what are some lessons you learned from them?
Oh, my parents are incredible. They're 88 and 89. They've been married almost 70 years. We call them the GOATs, the OGs. They're still madly in love. We tease him to get a room, and he's like, well, it's my house. You can leave, those types of things. But they instilled in us just that we were created and designed for a purpose, and figure out what that is and love life. And we were taught to love people from them. My dad's the one that said, you find the people smarter than you, and then you remove the obstacles out of their way so they can do what it is that you hired them to do. And they were also great with showing us the world and being citizens of the world. And we would go on missions trips every year to a different place in the world, and really understanding how to be grateful for what we do have, but because we have so much, we are owed to give that back and to give that to those who are in need. And also, we traveled all over the place. We learned history. My dad's a major history buff, and so I loved learning. And he taught us that leaders are learners, and if you stop learning, then you will hinder what it is that you are giving to those people who are around you and surrounding you, that are banking on you to continue to help them grow. So if you stop growing, so will they. So they taught us a lot of great leadership skills at an early age that I don't know we understood at that moment, but we sure do now.
Yeah, I mean, right. That's so amazing. What a life that they're both still married, still in love. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Last leadership question, Darla. What would you like your leadership legacy to be? What do you want people to say about you as a leader?
I want people to feel like the legacy I left is that which they were seen, that they believed they too could do anything, that when they leave me, they felt better, they felt inspired, they felt accomplished, like they can accomplish anything. I want it to be turned back into them, that they could be capable of something, and not just looking at all the things that this woman did. I want them to say, if she can do it, I can do it.
Excellent. Well, as we wind down in 2025 here, Darla, what are we looking forward to the most, whether it's with the consulting company, manufacturing, City of Fort Myers? Give us one big thing on your mind going into 2026.
I'm most excited and proud of the work we're doing at the manufacturing business from the standpoint of we will have finished an expansion project going from 10,500 square feet to just over 26,000 square feet. And what that allows us to do, what that allows our team to have more room to do, not having to go to all these other warehouses to get materials and coils and all of that, but really to make our process and our operation far more efficient than it has, so that we can better serve those who have trusted us with their materials and with their goals for 26. And, when they all do better, we'll do better. So we're looking forward to that.
Excellent. Well, Darla Bonk, Fort Myers City Councilwoman, entrepreneur, and CEO of Darla Bonk Consulting, thank you so much for joining us on the From the Corner Office podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Mark. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Business Observer From the Corner Office podcast. I'm your host, Mark Gordon. This podcast was produced by Reed Corley of the Corley Company in Sarasota. To hear more episodes of From the Corner Office podcast, go to businessobserverfl.com.